Okay, so thank you once again for joining our conversation today. You are all very welcome. My name is Marian Amwa, and the author of Breaking Through the Immigrant Handbook for Thriving in the American Workplace. This book goes beyond being a guide for immigrants. It shares universal principles and powerful stories, strategies, designed to help anyone excel in their professional life, professional journey, and in life. The purpose of these sessions really for empowerment, learning, sharing, and receiving tips to thrive in life, the workplace, and our different spheres. So while at it, we hope you find moments of laughter and levity, and you can identify with the life experiences that we share. We also hope that you can pass the information to those in our circles who may benefit. This means you can share the meeting, or you can point people to our YouTube channel, Breaking Through Immigrant Voices. Our topic today is top 5 rules to succeed in any office. Yes, it is really, really bold. Rules to succeed in any office. It is for anyone who wants to grow, anyone who is stuck in neutral, anyone who is stuck in a rut, or wants tips to coach or help someone. Maybe you're here for a friend. That's also fine. And I have with me someone who can help us discover these keys to succeed in our different workplaces. So the routine is you put your questions and comments in our chat and we'll address them. Like every time we say that if our speaker already today says anything that you really like is a Gantism, you emphasize it by putting it in the chat. So everyone help me to welcome Mr. Reginald Gant. I call him Reggie. He's a friend, he's a brother. He's a person that you need to know. So Reggie, you are very, very welcome today. I will have him introduce himself. Reggie, you introduce yourself. Fun facts, other fun facts. We like to hear the fun facts, and then we'll start our conversation for today. So welcome, Reggie, and welcome everyone.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, Marian, for just the opportunity to be on your platform. You are somebody that I've been admiring up close and from afar for a very long time. So, the fact that you are allowing me to share space with you right now is special for me. So thank you. So just a quick background about myself. My name is Reginald Gant. I am a native here of Baltimore, Maryland. Currently right now where I am, my wife and I, beautiful blended family. We have 5 children. Just yesterday, we actually celebrated 10 years of marriage, so God is working in that particular area. A fun fact about me that a lot of people don't know is that even though I'm an 80s baby, my favorite show growing up, my favorite show of all times was I Love Lucy.
Oh,
I've seen every single episode of I Love Lucy. I can't tell you how many times. And it still is my favorite show today. With everything else that we have going on, I just feel like laughter is important. And I Love Lucy is always something that I can turn to, to put a smile on my face and brighten up my day. So that's a fun fact about me that many people may not know, Marian.
Oh, wow. I Love Lucy. Okay, so if you haven't seen that, I'm sure you can find some reruns.
Yeah.
I Love Lucy. But this one, I want to say, I love Reggie. Thank you. I love Reggie being here. And I love you all for joining us today, whether by Facebook or by Zoom. So, Mr. Gantz, this is a really huge topic. I mean, office, workplace, even your business, you have a space where you share with, if it's your private business, you're an entrepreneur and everyone wants to thrive, everyone wants to do well, and you may spend more time with your co-workers than even with your family in a day, 8 hours. And so it's a very, very important topic dear to all of us who are gathered here and who'll be watching later. I'm curious, what is the number 1 rule that you want to share with us today?
Well, number 1 is such a loaded question. So I'll share one of the 5. I mean, let's just do it that way. We'll share 5 today.
Yes. Okay.
Right. But if I had to choose one, I would say one that I've observed, for a number of years. Now, mind you, I've been working since I was 14, so we're talking about 30 plus years. But as a professional, I've been working since 2003, so we're talking about what, 20 plus years at that point. One thing that I've observed is really critical for anybody who wants to succeed in the office is learning the landscape,
Mm.
right? Learning what the office landscape really is. So for anybody that's watching and you may not be sure about what I'm trying to say, is basically coming in and observing the company culture, right? How is the environment? Is it high stress? Is it high energy? Is it high performing? Is it the opposite of those things? You want to sit back and you want to observe, who are the movers, who are the shakers, who are the influencers. And on the flip side, who are the toxic individuals, that bring cancer, that bring more problems than solutions, to the table. So one of the things that I've observed is that, when leaders step into a brand new leadership role, let's just say they're coming into an organization and they automatically, indoctrinate into a leadership role. What amazing leaders do, phenomenal leaders do, leaders who are really on their game, they sit back and they pay attention first, right? You don't come into a brand new environment trying to change things. You don't even understand what's happening, right? You actually pay attention, you observe, you sit back from afar, you see, okay, this is how they do things, okay, well, now I see inefficiencies here, maybe we can tighten up in those processes. Well, I see that, we have about 4 or 5 people doing it over there one way, but then we have about 4 or 5 people over here doing it a different way. Maybe we can tighten up in those areas. But learning the landscape, Marion, is probably one of the number one things that I would say that we have to master, in any workplace. That works in business, that works at the employee level, that works in entrepreneurship. Just paying attention to the space around you, understanding it, understanding your role in that space, and how you can contribute and add value.
Wow. Okay. So let me just summarize. So I heard a lot about observe, take time to observe, take time to learn the people, the space, right? What about the processes? How do you do that?
Yeah. So, hopefully you have what we call SOPs in place, right? So those are things that you can study. But sometimes you'll see that, those things aren't there. And what I love about a system that doesn't have processes, organization that doesn't have processes, you've already identified an opportunity. You've
Mhm.
already identified a way that you can come in and add immediate value, but you have to understand what the processes are, right? So let's just say that you're used to using one system, and now you're using a brand new system. And instead of using the excuse, which is what many people do, I don't know that system. How about you take some time to learn that system? Even if that requires, maybe using some of your off time, right? Obviously we work 9 to 5. How about using some of your 5 to 9 time? How about using a couple of hours, maybe 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there on your weekends to polish yourself up in a particular area, right? I noticed that if we challenge ourselves to learn and grow, we really rise to the occasion. So processes are super important. If you see that there are no processes in place, that could be your way to shine. And we'll talk about, probably that a little later on in our conversation as well. But we always want to look for ways in which we can stand out in the office. Not in the bad way, of course, right? Because we all know that the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the noise. But anytime that we're adding tangible value, anytime that we're adding value to people or places or processes, we want to make sure that we do that. And if you don't understand a thing, it's not enough, as professionals, as working adults, which is what we all are. It's not enough to no longer say I don't know. You know, it's what can I do to learn what I don't know? Am I willing to learn what it is that I say that I don't know? Do I care enough? And that's what's really, driven me far in my career. And that's what I share, as I mentor and coach other, professionals that are coming up the ranks, now being it's crazy. I can't believe I've been working for over 30 years of my life, man. I started working at 14. This yeah, you learn a lot, then you reach a point where you want to give back.
Great. Oh, I learned some things. So two words are sticking out to me: opportunity and
Mm,
value. So you go
Mm-hmm.
into a play, learn the landscape.
Yeah,
There are no processes. Think about the ways that you can add value by creating processes. And I
absolutely.
heard you talk about people, places, and processes. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much. Okay. Learn the landscape was our first one.
Yeah,
What is the second one? Is welcome everyone. If you're just
yeah,
joining us, I
yeah.
have Mr. Gant breaking down top 5 rules to succeed in any office, and he's giving us 5 rules that we can apply. The first
Absolutely.
one has been learn the landscape. Mr. Gant, what is the second rule?
Okay. The second one, if I had to pick one, and that's such a phenomenal question. And actually, before I get to that second one, you just mentioned opportunity. I just want to share this quote that I live by, and it's a Winston Churchill quote. Winston Churchill was quoted as saying that an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty, but a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, right?
Can you
So I
say
want
that
I
again?
want to share that again, right? Because that's a huge nugget that changed my life. It changed because it's all about mindset. It's all about how you perceive a situation or a problem, right? An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. So if we even were to step back and take a look at, the current administration right now, not to get too political, but it's a difficult time for many people, right? We can honestly, in real life, real time, right now in 2025, especially for those of us who are working across federal government sectors, we can say that it's a very difficult time. But Winston Churchill, in his quote, what I love about it is that it helps us to reframe our mindset, because mindset is what's going to be the game changer for us. It's going to make or break us. For those of us that see difficult times, and we all should, the optimist sees the opportunity in this difficulty. So even in your office right now, even in your place of work, even in your community, even in your place of worship, opportunities are arising all around you in all of these difficult moments, places, and spaces. Are you going to focus on that, or are you going to focus on the problem, right? The difficulty itself, which means that you're not really bringing solutions to the table, which means that you're not really trying to bring about change, right? So I just wanted to share that quick nugget. The optimist sees the opportunity, the pessimist sees the difficulty. So I'm challenging everybody when it comes to your thoughts, when it comes to your beliefs. What are you thinking? What are you focusing on? Because what we focus on expands, right? What we focus on is what we attract more of. So if I'm looking at the landscape of the current administration, and all I see is problems, and that's all that I'm focusing on are problems, I'm attracting more problems. But if I see that there's an opportunity, there's a way for me to add value, there's a way for me to bring solutions, those are the things that I attract into my life. And those are the ways in which we begin to rise higher in our careers. But to your point, Marian, another thing that I've noticed is that networking in the office, right? Networking internally can take you really far. In my 20 plus years, I've been in federal government now, 20 plus years. I started in 2003. I've seen firsthand, having the honor and privilege of working with 4 different federal government agencies, all in HR. I have an HR background, by the way, for those that are tuning in. I've been in the field of HR since 2006. I've seen firsthand that when it comes to networking internally, it's usually more about who we know than what we know. And the reason why I say that is because I've been a personal benefactor, but I've also seen that knowing the right people can get you into the right places to meet the right people versus your know-how, right? You might bring your bachelor's degree to the table. You might bring your master's, you might bring your PhD to the table. But if nobody knows who you are, if nobody knows what you do, it doesn't really matter, right? So networking internally, if we're talking about advancing in the office, if we're talking about, winning the office politics game, navigating our way to the top, who knows you? So that's a question that I want you to ask yourself right now. In my place of work, Who knows me and who do I need to know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Reggie, you have put out some serious nuggets. Networking is number 2.
Yeah.
Who knows you, right? Knowing the right people is really key. Your degrees are great, but you have to know the right people to be in the right position, right? So ask yourself, who knows you? So how do you go about networking?
Yeah.
Because we often hear I network, but how do you do it? How do you do
Absolutely.
it?
Fantastic question. And I actually have a story that I'll share.
Okay.
It'll kind of tie in, learning the landscape as well as networking together. So when I started a number of years ago, I was young, I was eager, I was excited, and my employer at the time, there was no formal dress code. So it was
Mm,
kind of, you come in, you could just kind of dress as you, desire. And there was an old adage that I used to remember growing up that when in Rome, do what Romans do.
mm-hmm,
So, learning the landscape, learning the environment, I observed right away that, there was really no dress code. And me being young, I was in my early 20s at the time. I didn't really know too much of anything.
mm-hmm,
I just kind of did what everybody else did. But as time grew, I desired more, and I knew that where I was definitely not my end. Right? It was a beginning. It was an introduction. It was a way into government. So I began to just assess things, and I always saw this gentleman, and he had a corner office. He looked like me, which was a huge plus for me. He always wore suits. He always had a nice watch. He had the corner office. He had a beautiful view. He drove it was a Mercedes Benz. It was a 5 Series. I mean, he had everything that I desired. And I said to myself, we all work at the same place, but he's here. He's dressing this way. He's talking this way. He's associating with these people, and I'm over here. So when we're talking about, networking, how do you do it? Sometimes you just have to step out there on faith and be bold and introduce yourself. So I introduced myself to this man, and I began to ask him a series of questions, and we began what we call a mentor-mentee relationship. So unofficially, he took me under his wing, and he decided that, he had reached a point in his career where he was extremely successful and he was ready to turn around and give back. And obviously, me being started, I was primed and ready to get to where he was. So we began to have a series of meetings, and he really stretched my mind, because I told him, I was satisfied doing what I was doing, but it was time for me to do something different. And I'll never forget, Marion. He pulled me into his office one day, and he asked me a very challenging question, one that caused me to look within. It was the summertime, by the way, right? Summer. I was working in downtown Baltimore, so we weren't too far from the Lexington Market in the harbor area. So, no dress code, mind you. Summertime, I had on shorts and a t-shirt that particular day, right? When in Rome, do what Romans do. That's what people were wearing. That wasn't what he was wearing, but that's what my people in my space were doing. He pulled me into his office. He asked me a question. He said, "Hey, Reggie," he was like, "I hear you saying that you're ready to go to the next level." He was like, "This next question, I'm just going to shoot it to you real straight." And he was like, "I just want you to answer it. I don't want you to think about it. I don't want you to overanalyze it." He was like, "I'm going to ask you a question and I want a straight answer right away." And he said, "Would you hire you based upon how you look right now?" And it was the summertime, Auntie Marion. I'm sorry, Marion. And I had on shorts and a t-shirt. And I wanted to give him every excuse possible. And he was like, "I don't want to hear anything else besides, would you hire you, if you were in my position and you were able to hire you right now, based upon how you look, would you hire yourself?" And I said, "No." And through that network, right, through that question, through me being bold enough to ask him, through us going through this mentor-mentee relationship, he put me through a series of challenges. He
Mm-hmm.
challenged me to change the way that I dress. He
Wow.
challenged me to change my associations. He even challenged me in the way that I spoke and the way that I wrote, right? Because I was from Baltimore. So when you're from Baltimore, there's a certain vernacular and language that we use being Baltimoreans. But he challenged me in all of those different areas. And once I ran through the series of challenges, once I changed, and it was difficult, don't get me wrong. I had to I had to do something that was outside of my comfort zone, and I want to drop that nugget on y'all. That's not one of the five, but you always have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I need somebody
Mm.
to drop that into the chat. I need you to always be comfortable being uncomfortable. He encouraged me to change the way that I dress, so that I went from shorts and t-shirts to khakis and polos because that was more comfortable, eventually to slacks, eventually to suits, right? I had to change the folks that I associated with, the folks that were holding me up, because they say, the old adage, birds of a feather do what? They flock together. The folks that were comfortable where they were comfortable where they were, but I no longer was comfortable where I desired to be. So I had to do something different. And once I did everything that he asked me to do, the reason why networking is so important is that this gentleman, after I passed all of the tests, I read the books, I listened to the audios. He saw that I was serious, I was coachable, I was ready. He introduced me to his network. And I lie to you not, it went this way. On Friday, I was on the telephones because that was my job at the time. I was answering telephone calls, but I always had a desire to get into HR. He introduced me to the HR director, a really good friend of his, Marion, on a Friday. Me and him and the HR director have a meeting in his office. 15-minute meeting. She says, you know what? I've actually been looking for an HR assistant. I'm going to give you a chance. You can start on Monday. There was no resume. There was no job application. I didn't have to do anything because I networked internally. So sometimes for those of us that are listening, step out on faith. If you see somebody and they have the things that you have, or they're in the direction in which you want to head, introduce yourself. Let them know of your aspirations. Do what I call informational interviews, right? Drop that in the chat. Informational interview is basically just a meet and greet. It could be a 15, 20, 30-minute conversation where you just want to learn who they are, what they do. How did they get to where they got? And I did all of those things. I passed the test. He put me in his network, and network allowed me to get what I ultimately wanted, which was to get into HR. But I didn't have to play the resume game. I didn't have to snooze my way to the top, right? Just like that. So number two, I would say, after number one, which is learning the landscape, number two, networking internally. It will pay dividends.
Oh, Reggie, I wish I had heard you 20 years ago or maybe 30 years ago. This is great, 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 great. So number one is learn the landscape. Number two is network internally. And I really love the story. And I'm sure the gentleman, your mentor, also
Mhm.
helped you to understand the landscape.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Absolutely. He
You
taught me a
know?
different language. He taught me the language of, and it's crazy because I never really saw myself. And that's why it's so important to get around people who see you for who you are. He taught me the language of leadership. I didn't see myself as a leader at the time because I was new and I was young. But he opened my eyes to the fact that anybody can lead anywhere at any given time where you are. Because leadership
Wow.
is not a title, it's a mindset, it's a belief. And if you believe that you are a leader, you can be a leader right where you are with what you have today. And once he helped me see who I was, he saw something that I didn't see, and he instilled his belief into me, and then I believed. And he taught me the language of leadership, and that language of leadership allowed me to really thrive in all environments, inside and outside of work, still to this day.
Oh my goodness. I can wow, wow, wow. Oh, that's all that I can say. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Comfortable being uncomfortable. Clothing, associations, learning the language. Thank you for this great tip. Number one, learn the landscape. Number two, network internally. Wow. So there's a comment. Let me read a few comments. Brenda put, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Then Genevieve said, wow, we need to learn the language. Leadership is not a title, it is a mindset. Oh, Reggie, I don't know whether we'll finish this, but check us to number three. This is good, good,
Yeah.
good food. And
Yeah,
if
I'm
it's
having
good
a
stuff, please,
fantastic time.
yeah, put some comments in that this is good stuff. Reggie, thank you so much. Thank you so much. What is number three?
If I had to pick a third one, which is one that has been really near and dear to my heart, is always keeping your eyes on the goal.
Keep your eyes
Right?
on the goal.
Keep your eyes on the goal. So, in my house, my wife and I, we are avid readers. Professional and personal development is something that we wholeheartedly believe in. So, a good book that I recommend, just because it's been everything, is Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, right? One of the things that he talks about a lot is to begin with the end in mind, right? So as we're talking about keeping our eyes on the goal, that's in perfect alignment with beginning with the end in mind. Yeah, you might be on the phones today, but that's not your end game, right? Keeping your goal, keeping your eyes on the goal, beginning with the end in mind is super important. So you have to, how can I put it? Let me just share a story. So there were several moments in my career in which I had to pivot, right? And we live in the world right now, unfortunately, where I feel like pivot should be everybody's second language. You should be ready to pivot at any given moment, at any given time, because things are changing. Change is the only constant that we have, in this world. So as I was keeping my eyes on the goal, as I started, in HR, I was an HR assistant. And that's where you learn all about HR. That's where you get your fundamentals. That's where you get your foundation set. But my goal was HR specialist, because HR specialist, that's at the journeyman level. That's when you're at the top, because there's a career progression. So, and my particular agencies, it was usually HR assistant, then HR specialist, and then HR program expert. Then you go into leadership and management. So I wanted that track, and I wanted to be on the fast track because I was just always hungry. So as I was HR assistant, for a number of years, naturally I had my eyes on the goal of what was next, HR specialist. Um, but how many times, Marion, have you encountered that sometimes what you want, it won't always be attainable immediately? Sometimes we have what we call blockages or barriers or impediments, i.e., it could be colleagues, that are trying to undermine you, or it could even be leadership or management that may have a favorite that they have their eyes on. And, when that promotion comes up, you're necessarily not top of mind. So there were many moments in my career journey over the years where I had to pivot because I had my eyes on the goal. I've gotten comfortable leaving, to try new opportunities. So again, as I shared earlier, I've worked for 4 different federal government agencies. And the reason why I always left one agency and went to another is because if you can't get what you want where you are, you have to have enough belief in yourself, enough, grit, enough courage to say, you know what? If I've added value here and they've seen the value that I've added, obviously because they've hired me, they've given me an opportunity. Perhaps there's somebody else out there that sees the value that I bring, that's willing to give me an opportunity at a higher level. And there were moments in my time where it was either due to management or it was due to colleagues, or it could have even been due to maybe even my own lack of self-confidence at that particular moment or time and season. But I've left, right? I've had enough courage to go into the abyss, And what I found to be true is that when you are willing to gamble on yourself, when you are willing to draw a line in the sand and say, you know what, um, either I can stay where I am and keep my comfort, or I can chase after the greatness that I know that I have in me. And you chase after that greatness, you know what I've noticed is that God, He's there with you. So when we're talking about keeping your eyes on the goal, a nugget that I just want to leave is that sometimes you may have to leave where you are. Right? I'm listening to a book right now. It's called The Dream Giver. You know, I've read it several times. I'm just now listening to the audio, and it's talking about leaving the land of familiar. And that's where we end up oftentimes in our career. You know, when we get comfortable in a place, in a particular space, with a particular job, you know, we get comfortable with a particular set of coworkers. We get comfortable in a particular routine. It becomes what we call the land of familiar. But sometimes God is going to require you to leave the land of familiar and go into the land of unknown, because there's something greater over there. So as you keep your eyes on your goal, if there's anybody watching or listening, whether you're doing it live or on the replay, and you feel stuck, you feel stagnant, you feel complacent, I want you to ask yourself, am I living in the land of familiar right now? Is it time for me to sharpen my skills, sharpen my axe? Is it time for me to pivot? Right? As I keep my eyes on the goal, because we feel it, Marion. You feel within your soul when there is something more, there is something greater, there's a heaviness that comes along with going into a particular environment day after day when you know that your time there has lapsed. So I ask the question to everybody who's listening: do you want to keep comfort, or do you want to chase after greatness? And that choice is solely yours. And I need us to understand that if we decide to keep comfort, then what we do is we eliminate any reason to have excuses, any reason to complain, because we've chosen the comfort and everything that comes along with it. But for those of us, we're hungry, we're thirsty for more. We know that there is something else. There's a bigger meaning, there's a greater purpose, and you're willing to chase after your greatness. Perhaps God is calling you to leave the land of familiar to step into the unknown. What is that going to take? It's going to take trust and faith. Trust in yourself, trust in your creator, faith in your skills and your abilities, that you can work anywhere. Because guess what? It's never been about the job. It's always been about us. And I'm speaking to myself, even now as a federal government employee. I come to work every day. I don't know if I'm going to have a job at the end of the day or not, because of the administration that we work for right now. From one day to the next, I don't know if I'm going to come home to a job, but I remind myself every single day, number one, I know whose I am. But number two, it's never been about my employer. It's been about Reginald Gant Jr. the entire time. I have a skill set that I can take anywhere at any given time and earn income. Why is that? I've developed myself day in and day out over the years, personally and professionally. So number three, keep your eyes on the goal. Because one of my mentors, he says this: it's impossible to stop a man or woman who will not quit. My employer is not my God. Yes, you cut me a paycheck. Yes, I love the paycheck. Yes, the paycheck allows me to take care of my life and my family and do things. But at the end of the day, I had an employer before you. And if our relationship, if just so happens that, it's time for us to go our separate ways, I too shall have another employer, because Reginald Gant has built himself up over the years. So I speak to the person that's listening, that's watching. As you build yourself up over the years, never put all of the onus on your employer to take care of you. You are the goal. Keep your eyes on the goal. The goal is you getting to where you desire to be. How do you do that? You build yourself up one day at a time, one book at a time, one tool at a time, one training at a time, one volunteer experience at a time.
Listen, if you're watching right now and you know a young person or somebody who is sort of stuck, please forward them. If you're on Facebook, share. If you're on Zoom, send them the link. The things Mr. Gant the things you are sharing right now, they are gold. Please share with a friend, share with a friend. It's impossible. I like that we said it's impossible to stop a man who doesn't want to quit. Keep comfort or chase after greatness. Leave the land of familiar to the land of unknown. You are preaching, you are speaking truth, and these are serious nuggets that I'm already thinking that you have to come, because I know that these 5 are just samples. There are more that you can share. There's a comment in the chat: keeping an optimistic mindset while taking practical steps towards that goal. Yeah. Thank you so much. If you are, I need to see some action in the chat. If this is really helping you, you are getting some new tips and, or reminders, just put something in the chat. Reggie, this is great. Okay. I mean, I'm taking a lot of notes. So if you see my head going down like this, is because I'm taking a lot of notes. If you can't get what you want where you are, then maybe it's time to look for something else that would appreciate the value that you bring. Yeah. Yeah. Build yourself up, one tool, one resource, one book. Thank you. These are great. Okay. So what is number 4? What number 4 tip do you have for us? I know you have several tips, but today we are dealing with 5. And so what is number 4?
If I had to choose a 4th one, Marian, I would say serve, right?
Serve.
So Jim Rohn is someone that I listen to often, right? He doesn't know it, obviously, he's no longer with us, but Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, like these guys, Tony Robbins, these guys, these icons have been mentors of mine for a very long time. Jim Rohn was once quoted saying that service to many leads to greatness. Service to many or service to the masses is what leads to greatness. So as we're navigating the office, and we're trying to climb our way towards success, I rely on, the number 1 book of all times, and that just happens to be the Holy Bible. It says that for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to live his life as a ransom for many. I believe that's Mark 10:45, right? So as we're talking about the office and we're talking about greatness and, reaching the epitome levels of greatness, I would say you have to serve your way there. So what does that look like? Volunteering has been invaluable for me in my career. There were plenty of doors that were closed to me when I tried to force my way in, trying to do it Reggie's way. But then I noticed, my wife likes to call it the palms up approach. That when you actually, instead of trying to kick the door in, when you try to serve your way in, i.e. volunteer, i.e. Add value to other people, they're more apt to bring you along or, open that door or that window. So I was known in my particular place of serving. I would find a senior leader. I would ask them, about some of the things that they have going on. How could I help? Our agency, we ran a lot of events all of the time. I was actually really good at logistics. I was really good at taking care of a lot of things behind the scenes. For a long time, Marion, I always thought that behind the scenes is where I wanted to be. I actually hid behind the scenes because I had a really good skill set, of taking care of business behind the scenes and making other people look good. But then there comes a point in time when you realize that, your voice matters, right? Your presence matters. The words that you say matter. And somewhere along the lines, like God just really worked on me, and I really started to believe in who I was and whose I was. So I went from serving other people in their events to being invited to speak at these same events. And there were other people at my particular level and lower that had no access to those spaces whatsoever. Because we're talking about senior executive and above spaces. I was never in those spaces. I was still at the journeyman level, working my way up. But it was through volunteering. It was through having folks to become advocates for me. And how did these folks become advocates for me? I served in so many different places. I joined advisory councils. I volunteered for work groups. I got outside my particular area and I started to meet people across the agency. So me being in HR, You know, it was important for me to understand, like, what are y'all guys doing in IT? What are y'all guys doing over there in finance and accounting? What are you guys doing over here in buildings and facilities maintenance? And as I started to meet more people, I was able to serve in different capacities. Now, because I'm adding value to people outside of HR, and guess what? Everybody loves to have an HR contact, right? If you want any contact within your agency, you want to have a direct contact to somebody who works in HR.
Yes.
So now, as I'm adding value to them, they're now saying that, Reggie is a direct connect to HR. So anything that I need HR related, if Reggie can't help, he knows somebody. So I've proven myself to be a resource. So when I'm talking about serving, I'm talking about serving yourself to greatness. Identify those leaders, those influencers, those decision makers. It could be in your direct chain of command, it could be somewhere else. What do they have going on that you can help? How can you offer your skills, your time, your talents, your abilities to make their workload easier? Can you make introductions for them? You know, are there ideas that you can bring to what they are doing that can make it better? You know, whatever it is, as you serve, doors, windows, and opportunities just make themselves available, Marion. So I'll stop right there, for that one because I could talk about that all day.
Yes, serve. Arabi says, serve yourself to greatness. Okay, there was an earlier comment. Ruth chose to leave the land of familiar to fulfill her destiny, to become the ancestor of David and ultimately the ancestor of Savior Jesus Christ. She fulfilled a role in our Heavenly Father's plan of action. Okay, there's another comment. The question, how can I help, can open doors. How can I help? This is so good, Reggie. This is so good. So let me just summarize a few things. And if there are any questions, by all means, put them in the chat. We'll address them. It's take initiative, serving yourself. So I heard you talk about taking initiative, identifying opportunities to serve, and invest in your own success. Invest in your own success when you do these things. Thank you. So we have our four. The first one was learn the landscape. Number 2, network internally. Number 3, keep your eyes on the goal. And number 4 was serve yourself to greatness. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you, Reggie, for coming. Mr. Reginald Gant is our speaker. As you all hearing all day. Somebody will say truth bombs that he's dropping and the nuggets and the wisdom that he's dropping today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to all of you who are listening either here, Zoom, or by Facebook, or will listen to the session later. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me make a few announcements before we go to the last and final one. Our next session will actually be next week because of the schedule of our speaker. And it will be with next week is May 10th with Nana Bafo Ewa. He's an immigrant. You don't want to miss the session. And the topic is the will to walk again. The will to walk again. I will leave it there. His story is inspiring. It will be a part 1 and a part 2 back to back. So 10th and the 17th, we'll have him here. And please subscribe to our channel if this is really good information for you and for people that you know. Is breaking through the immigrants, breaking through immigrant voices. Subscribe, like, comment, and like we said at the beginning, the conversations are based on my book, Breaking Through the Immigrant's Handbook in the American Workplace. You can find it online on Amazon. So we are now getting to the last tip, office rule. Brother Reginald Gant, I did it. I said it, brother. Yes, he's my brother. He's a friend. He's a colleague. What is number 5? I know that you have more than 5, so maybe part 2 will be the next 5. So today we are dealing with top 5, not in any order, but these rules will help you succeed in any office. I don't know whether it was a question. Okay, the question how can I help can open doors. It was edited. Okay, very good. All righty. So brother got the Reginald Gant. Okay, I did. I said don't call me auntie, and I'm doing that. Okay, Reggie, what is the number 5 that you want to share with us today?
Okay, so to round it out for today, if I had to have a 5th one for today, I would say take control of your career, right? Take control of your career. Now, what do I mean by that? I need us to all understand that we are all the CEO of our career and our journey. Yes, our employer has given us an opportunity. Yes, we appreciate that opportunity, but I need us to all understand that we are the captain of our own destinies, right? So take control of your career. Remember that you are the CEO of your career. So, how exactly do you do that, for example? One of the things that's been extremely successful for me in my career trajectory has been creating visibility around my projects, right? Because again, I mentioned earlier at the top of our gathering, oftentimes it's not what you know, right? It's who you know. And it's also about who you know and do they know what you actually do. So I was famous for creating visibility. Anytime that I was working on an assignment, so this is a fantastic tip, right? People love to give advice, right? Especially senior leaders. They love to give advice. They love to give back. I noticed that a lot of people even like to talk about themselves. They like to brag in that particular area. When I was working on a project, especially one that I was proud of, I would be known for popping it out to other leaders across the agency and asking them, hey, what are your thoughts on this right here? As I'm trying to polish it up, as I'm trying to finish it off, most of the time it was already finished, Marion. It was already a done deal. But what was I really doing ultimately underneath all of that? Yeah, it was nice if I got, your words of encouragement or your advice. I was ultimately trying to get you to see what I was doing, right? Because now, once you have visibility around what I'm doing, now you understand more of the skills and value that I bring to the table. Now you can begin to say, you know what? I could use a person like that, over here on my team. So when we're talking about creating visibility around your work, sometimes it's the art of self-promotion. As letting your supervisor know what you're doing, letting your manager know what you're doing, letting their manager know what you're doing, but doing it in a way where you're asking for advice, you're asking for some feedback. You're using language or vernacular like, you know what, I'm just about done with this particular project or assignment. I'm really proud of it. But from your point of view, from where you sit, in this particular agency or organization, I'm just curious to know, what are your thoughts? What feedback or advice or guidance would you have, as I polish this thing off? So now what you're doing is two things. You're getting before them, what you're working on that you're proud of, but now they're also seeing and reading and experiencing firsthand what exactly is that you're doing. Now, guess what? They're looking at Marion in a different way. They're saying, you know what, man, I knew Marion was great, but now I'm really seeing firsthand, like she really has analytical skills. Oh, she can really write. She's really visionary, right? So creating that visibility is the art of self-promotion. And sometimes it's just asking, for feedback one-on-one. So when I mentioned those informational interviews earlier, getting those 15, 20-minute conversations with individuals that you respect, that's when you use that opportunity as well. So as you're learning about them and what they're doing, what they're working on, what they did to get to where they are, you in turn use a few moments to say, you know what, hey, here's a project that I'm working on right now. Like what would you do if you were in my situation? So when I'm talking about taking control of your success, understanding that you are the CEO, right? Nobody's going to promote you more than you. Nobody's going to brag about you more than you. But you can lighten that load by sharing what you do with so many different people just by asking them, hey, you know what? What's your feedback? What's your advice? What would you do, to cap this off if you were in my shoes? And then all of the wisdom, all of the nuggets, all of the information, if something comes back and it gives you something that you can do that actually will make your product better, why not implement that? So you've done a myriad of things just by doing that. You've gotten out exposure. Now you're bringing light to the skills and value that you bring to the table to many people. But now people are looking at you in a different way. Now they're seeing that, you know what, hey, uh, Marion might be a resource for me. I have been able to leave departments and go to different departments because I was indirectly recruited doing that. There, I always so look. Let me. I just love how God works because I mean He truly will give you the desires of your heart. When I wanted to get into HR, I was able to get into HR, and then there were different parts of HR, and I learned. And there was a special part of HR that I wanted to get into. For some reason, I wanted to get into learning and development, and it was just a hard area to get into. It was a club, it was a network. I wasn't in that network at all. I tried to network my way in, that didn't work. I tried to meet the leaders. They were tight-fisted, they were closed-mouthed. And I said, Lord, I want to be in learning and development. So how did I get into learning and development? I actually started, since I couldn't get in that way, I was like, well, let me try another door. I started to engage in conversations with my colleagues, my peers, right, who were in learning and development. I'm over here doing another part of HR. You're doing what I want to do. Lo and behold, Marion, I came across an individual. They were tired of working in learning and development. And guess where they wanted to work? Where I worked. Guess what we were able to do? We were able to sit down over a series of meetings, conversations with each other, getting to learn each other, build a relationship amongst one another. We were able to approach our bosses and we got swapped. So here it is. I wanted to get into your area. You wanted to get into my area. You weren't having success getting in where I was. I wasn't having success getting in where you were. Our bosses got to talking and the swap happened. And everybody got what they wanted. So when I say sometimes you have to be the CEO of your career, you have to take it upon yourself. Again, that goes back to keeping your eyes on the goal. Number 3, if there's something that you want, it is impossible to stop somebody who will not give up. Right? But what did I have to do? I couldn't just sit around and complain. I couldn't just be whining and crying about it. I had to get proactive. Sometimes we have to think outside of the box. So going to management didn't work, right? How can I get through the side door? Colleague to colleague. It's impossible to stop a man or woman who will not quit. So Marion, as we wrap it up, I'm
Yes.
looking at the time right now. Number 1 was learning the landscape. You always want to come in and observe the environment. You want to identify the areas of deficiencies, and you want to implement processes in which people and systems and processes can become better. Number 2 was networking internally. You are just one person away from getting what it is that you want, right? So we have to network. It's not about what you know, even though what you know is very important. Obviously, you have to know something, but who do you know and who needs to know you are questions that you want to start to consider. Number 3 is keeping your eyes on the goal, so that aligns with Stephen Covey's begin with the end in mind. Yes, you are, new to your career right now, but where do you desire to end up? And you focus on that every day, and you become the man or woman that's deserving of sitting in that seat, when that time comes. Number 4 was serving yourself to greatness. So you do that through volunteering, through personal development, through mentorship, right? Through getting advocates to speak on your behalf. And then number 5 was never forgetting that you are the CEO. You are the captain of your ship. You are the captain, and nobody can stop you. If you need to pivot, pivot. If you need to move, move. But if you decide to sit where you are, a question that I want to ask, Marianne, as I pass this back over to you, heavy question for us. Is it harder to leave comfort or live with regret? Is it harder to leave comfort? Is it harder to leave the land of familiar, or is it harder to live with regret? As I look back over my career and my journey in these 30 plus years, the regret of not going after what I wanted always outweighed my comfort zone. Therefore, I was always willing to go after what I wanted. Otherwise, I felt like I would die slowly every single day where I was being comfortable. And that's not what God has called us to do. That's not the life that God has called us to live. So for you listening, watching, live or replay, does not matter. Is it harder to leave your comfort zone, or is it harder to live with regret? You have to make that choice. Marion, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Reginald Gant. This has been amazing, amazing, amazing. Is it harder to leave comfort, or is it harder to live with regrets? You have shared a lot with us. You've even done the summary for me. So thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, for joining. This will be put on YouTube. I think there's one last question. Which is, oh, Mary B. Wow, amazing. Remember, folks, you are the CEO of your life, of your career. And there was another one that nugget that you dropped, which was what Winston Churchill said. An optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. A pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. The choice is all of ours. Thank you so much, Reggie, for joining us today.
If I could just do one more thing, Marion.
Yes, and you can close that.
Look, I would be remiss if I did not tell everybody to go out and get this book right here. This book, Breaking Through by Marion herself, is phenomenal. It is game changing. As you see, I have a copy right here in my hand. I told you earlier, my wife and I are avid readers. Personal development turns you into the man or woman that is deserving of your heart's desires. If you want personal development, if you want professional development, and you don't have a copy of this book, I just don't know how serious you are. That's all that I'll have to say about that, Marion. Tell them how to get the book, please, because everybody needs this in their toolkit.
Yes, thank you, Brother Reggie. Thank you, Reggie. You can get the book on Amazon, Breaking Through the Immigrant Handbook for Thriving in the American Workplace. Marian E. Amwa, you can get it. And if you do get it, please leave a comment. But thank you all so much. This has been an amazing session. Thank you, Reggie. And you will surely come back. Thank you. And see you all. Bye-bye.